Hey everybody, I'm Ryan, and I'm going into my 7th year of teaching, and 2nd year of teaching world history through the video game Civilization 5, at just a normal, small, public high school. And the point of this video is that I'm basically going to be brain dumping my experience, and how I plan on moving forward with this next school year. We're going to talk about why I teach through a video game, how this teaching through video games came to be, how last year went, and changes I plan on making from what I've learned. A weird twist near the end of last year with some TikTok fame I got from being an esports coach and teaching through video games, which eventually led to me getting in contact with Fraxis, how I'm teaching through Civilization 5 this year, and some closing thoughts. I teach history through video games for a lot of reasons. First off is selfish. It's more fun for me because I enjoy it more. I enjoy long-term semi-competitive things, especially administering them, which is kind of weird. It's a weird personality flaw, I don't know. And because I enjoy this way of teaching so much more, I subconsciously put more effort into it. That's just how people work. And it makes me look forward to work. Second, for all the same reasons, it's fun for the kids. It makes them look forward to class and thus learn more. And most of the kids love the competition. I'm able to form lessons around cool things that the kids are actively stakeholders in. And the third is, different is good. There's obviously something wrong with how we teach in public schools. Somewhere between 3rd and 9th grade, it seems like kids begin to hate learning. And so the traditional method of teaching, even with activities, needs to be altered. And this is my attempt at throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks. And the fourth reason is that I get to use it as a carrot to motivate kids, which usually comes in the form of if they owe work, they work on that instead of playing the game. Me teaching history through video games was sort of a long time coming. In my teacher evaluation a few years in a row, when asked in my dream world if I could do anything different, we talked about my want and just thoughts about teaching with video games. It had always been kind of a fantasy of mine. Because my job is teaching, I enjoy history, but I go home from my teaching job and play video games. And I would love to combine the two, especially since a lot of kids are the same way. My principal originally thought it was a cool idea and humored me, but the second time I mentioned it in one of my yearly evaluations, he told me he talked about the idea with his adult son, who told him about how people were using Assassin's Creed in order to explore historical places. And with that, he was totally won over to the idea. And besides all of that, he's a great and supportive boss anyway. But it was still a few years before I was really able to conceptualize the class, pick the game, and actually pull the trigger. Needless to say, the first year of me trying to do this totally new concept came with quite a few bumps. At the end of the previous year, I made sure to talk with the right people, send the right emails, to make sure the games were bought over the summer, computers were secured for the class since we don't have a computer lab, and everything was installed and all set. Well, that didn't happen. At all. So I went into my classroom with 3 days before I had students, with World History Through Gaming in my schedule and none of the legwork done, besides the lesson planning. I'm really not sure why it didn't happen. I assume it's because it was a video game and not a traditional teaching tool. Because if I ever express interest in normal technology and traditional teaching tools, the work is done the same day. So now, 3 days before school started, I'm in a panicked rush. And now I, a teacher, am looking for a spot that we can buy Civilization 5 when they accept our tax-exempt status as a school, but Steam doesn't do that. By the way, the reason I did Civilization 5 is I think it's a little bit easier to pick up for new players than Civilization 6. It's harder to get it eliminated earlier, and it was $40 cheaper at the time. Unfortunately, Civilization 6 was free on the Epic Store 5 months before the class actually started, but I didn't know I was teaching that class then, so oh well. Through working with the finance person in the school, we ended up going through Best Buy, where we just bought the digital keys and put them into Steam. But the issue of the computers remained because we didn't have a computer lab, so I was able to get some old laptops that hadn't been used for years. I think they normally use them for yearbook or something. So now we own the games, we have the computers to play the games on, hopefully, because I'm a little worried they actually will run the games. And I need to find the space to store these laptops in my classroom. So after that panicked rush, and in addition to getting everything else ready for a normal school year, I now had to update all the computers, download Steam, input keys, and download Civilization on the 12 PCs. It sounds easy, but it was incredibly time-consuming, especially on not great computers and school Wi-Fi. Whatever, I dealt with it. Even though I'm still convinced it wasn't my job, it's time to teach class. My original plan for the class was to have kids do mini projects on social policies, technologies, cities, civilizations, etc. that were in the game as they progressed through the game. In a big multiplayer game with everybody in the class, they would present the project on that thing, I would add any missing information, and that would be the teaching of the class. Here is where I learned a really important thing in teaching, and new teachers pay attention. Never rely on kids doing work or presenting for your lesson plans, because when they don't do it or refuse to present, you still need stuff for the kids to do. So that was a hard lesson. I never said I was perfect, I'm just brain dumping. So the class was a cycle of playing the game, me stopping them whenever something happened in the game that happened in real history so we could talk about it and have a mini lesson on it, which was a lot. Working on the mini projects over those aforementioned technology, social policies, etc. Presenting those mini projects, which I added to, and doing summative projects over the enduring themes of the historical eras that they were playing in. I also kept a blank map on my wall so people could label the original locations of the things that they were talking about in their mini projects to keep them oriented, but the map became really messy really quickly, and I abandoned it probably a quarter of the way into the year. That went pretty okay until I realized the incredible issues that Civilization 5 multiplayer had. There were horrible desyncing issues, especially when you're on bad computers with choppy internet, like our old school laptops on school Wi-Fi. Through this time, I learned to do a bunch of the different workarounds. Unfortunately, most of those workarounds required you to be on the friends list of other people in the game, so you can pop the person that is desyncing out and back into the game. But you need to have spent $5 on Steam in order to put somebody on your friends list. And if you remember from before, we bought all the games on Best Buy and entered CD codes. We didn't actually spend money on Steam, so we couldn't add the accounts as like friends to each other. So there was a lot of saving and rehosting, which was very frustrating for all parties. I also split my larger class into smaller games and made them restart, so there'd be less of a chance of desyncing affecting so many people. That part was really rough. That part was not fun. And I think the worst part about the desyncing issue is while it was happening and kids were getting frustrated and I was getting frustrated and kids were like kind of blaming me, I was watching this class that I had worked so hard on Conceptualize and really wanted to work and that I loved sort of fall apart. On the side, however, the esports team at the high school, which I coach, was picking up steam and offered a large donation for gaming computers. When the esports team got those gaming computers, we shifted all of the games over to the gaming computers, which again, it was my responsibility to install the games, download Steam, log everybody in, and transfer over the save files. Don't know why. But since we moved over to the good computers, we had significantly less issues with desyncing, though it still happened occasionally, being on better computers, and we were finally wired in. Because by the way, school internet is actually really good when wired in. The Wi-Fi is just awful because so many people are on it. It's like unbelievably fast. Unfortunately, by the time this happened, it was pretty late in the year, a little too late to salvage it and really call it a successful class. In the end, 3 games were played, which lasted all year in a large multiplayer game, and they all finished with the science/space race victory by the Persians, Greeks, and Aztecs, respectively. And even though there were a ton of tech issues, even though there were problems with my original lesson plans, even if tech things went well, the reviews from the kids were really good, and they said that they learned a lot. It made them look forward to school, and made them excited about history, which was my goal. But I knew moving forward I needed to revise it to make it a better class. Even with the better equipment, I think the kids would be better served to make it a more traditional class that is focused on the game, rather than a game class with a project focus. Especially since I would love this world history through gaming class to eventually be a multiple pathway approach to getting your world history credit. Now, shifting gears to TikTok, I normally make videos about my life. And near the end of the year, I was actually going sort of low-key viral, getting quite a few videos over 1 million, a few over 2 million, got one over 3 million, talking about coaching the high school esports team, and talking about this teaching through gaming class, which led me to coming in contact with some representatives from Fraxis, the company that makes Civilization, saying that they were sending my TikToks around the office talking about teaching through it, and they were impressed. However, even through this contact and other more traditional sources, I couldn't secure a donation for the expansions to Civilization 5 or Civilization 6. They just wanted to let me know they thought it was cool. So we continue teaching through the vanilla Civilization 5 game since we can't afford 6 or the expansions. Which is fine, except for there's no religion in the base game of Civilization 5, and it would be really cool to be able to use the game to teach that rather than having to do that totally in class. So moving forward, using what I learned, I'm going to teach world history through gaming a little different this year, and I'm going to walk you through what I'm doing this year. First, we'll go through normal introduction to the class, talk about the syllabus, go over the emergency drills, things like that. Show the Civilization 5 trailer to get them hyped for the class, and spend some time focusing on the game and explaining the game up front rather than trying to get them to learn it themselves. We talk about what we're going to be using the game to learn, explaining that in the game you'll be creating an alternate history, but the concepts you will interact with will be totally real and we'll talk about them in class, so they know that up front so they don't confuse things. And explaining that Civilization 5, basically if you use your common sense, you'll know what to do in the game. You can make decisions in the game like it were a real civilization. And also explaining that I won't give strategy advice, especially if you're against another player, but I'll be totally willing to explain how things work when you guys play. I make sure to warn them about the desyncing issue so they aren't mad at me the first time it happens, because it will happen, I'm sure. And I explain how to win, so that they can start thinking about the direction they want to drive their civilization right from the beginning. I explain that there's the world domination victory, where you control all of the original capitals, the space race victory, where you get to the end of the technology tree and you launch a rocket ship into space, the utopia victory, where you unlock all of the social policies by having high culture, and the United Nations victory, where you become allied with the most city-states when the United Nations is built. Or, unfortunately, we have to have the time victory, where you have a score in the game that's dependent on a bunch of different things, and if we happen to run out of time in the year and the game not be done, then the person with the highest score will win. One stipulation, though, is I'll be vetoing the science victory, because all 3 people who won last year won via that victory. So I want to see if kids can win in other ways and go in different directions. And I'll probably do the same thing if it becomes a trend that a certain civilization starts winning more. Just always vetoing the victory in the civilization that has won the most, just to spice things up. And then we let them pick their civilization, where I think it's important to talk about each one of the civilizations within the context of the game, also warning them that they'll have to do a nation project depending on what era their civilization originally showed up in is when it will be due. So they only have to do one nation project. For example, if they pick Arabia, China, Egypt, India, or Rome, their nation project is in the first unit, so it'll probably be due a month into the school year. Where if they pick America or Germany, which we'll be talking about in Unit 5, it'll be due much later in the school year, but they only have to do one. In addition, each civilization has a unique ability, a unique unit, a unique building or improvement, and some civilizations have a starting bias, where they'll always start around a certain terrain. So we go through each one of the civilizations. Arabia, China, Egypt, India, Rome, Greece, Japan, the Mongols, Persia, the Aztecs, England, France, Ottomans, Russia, Siam, Songhai, the Iroquois, America, and Germany, going over each one of those individual units, each ability, each unique building or improvement, their starting bias, and giving a little snippet on the history of the country. Because it's important what they pick, they enjoy. Generally, I pick a fun, random order for them to pick. They select their nation, so everybody has a different one, and then that's the nation they're going to be playing all year, and the nation that they'll have that country project due for in whatever unit the nation popped up. Or I guess I should be saying civilization. Unit 1 in the class will be the technological and environmental transformations from the beginnings of humanity to 600 BCE. Unit 2 in the class is organization and reorganization of human societies from 600 BCE to 600 CE. Unit 3 is regional and interregional interactions from 600 CE to 1450 CE. Unit 4 is political, social, economic, and global interactions that led to revolution from 1450 CE to 1750 CE. Unit 5, industrialization and global integration from 1750 CE to 1900 CE. And Unit 6, the acceleration of global change and realignment from 1900 CE to present day. All aligned with the main learning results. After we have that intro class and they pick their civilizations, I let them play around with the game in single player a little bit, because it would be kind of unfair to throw them into a big competitive multiplayer game with actually zero experience. I do my first lessons on the origins of humanity, nomads, civilizations independently discovering agriculture, and the formation of cities and towns as trading centers, because that sets the kids up with the knowledge that is needed to start the game of civilization. Because after all of that is when the game starts. And then the following cycle will start, where we have the class every other weekday. Any Thursday or Friday, we'll have a full class playing the game. While they're playing the game on Thursdays and Fridays, I'll be paying really, really close attention. And whenever they discover a new technology, whenever they adopt a new social policy, or something happens in the game that happened in real history, I stop the class and do a quick 2-ish minute primer on it so they can understand the context of what they're interacting with. If they have class on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I'll be teaching information in a more traditional format, teaching the history of the era they're actually in and playing in the game, which often lines up surprisingly well. When half of the lessons are taught, I do a quick check-in quiz on enduring themes that we're examining, and this is where I come to my philosophy on homework. I see homework as teacher-forced studying, so I give the kids an opportunity that they know the basic information that I expect them to know and be able to do the basic skills I expect them to do through these quizzes. Now, if they prove to me that they can do that skill or know that thing, then they don't need to practice it more. If they prove to me that they don't have that skill or don't understand that thing, then that's where that teacher-forced studying comes into play. So if you prove to me you don't know the basic information that I'm asking on the quiz, then you'll have homework where you have to read a single section on the chapter that you missed the question for. And normally I only have like one question per chapter. So like the quiz is actually 3 questions with like only about the enduring themes, sometimes 2 questions. So if you get it wrong, you read the chapter, answer some questions out of that chapter to practice the thing you proved to me that you needed practice for. We have another quiz at the end of me teaching at the very end of the unit over the second half of the lessons with the same idea in it. And the cycle of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, learning in class, and Thursday, Friday, playing the game until either the lessons finish up or the game finishes the era that we're talking about. If the game finishes the era early, then we do lessons until the end of the unit. If the lessons finish up early, then they play the game until they catch up to the lessons. Once both the lessons and the game have finished up the era, I hand out study guide with possible questions that'll be on the test, along with important understandings and terms. We then watch Mankind, the story of all of us, until that also catches up to where we are at the end of the era. While we watch Mankind, I allowed students to work on their study guide, to work on any homework they owe me from the quizzes, where if they really want to, I also allow them to go to the library if they don't want the distraction of Mankind, being that Mankind's just a supplementary cool thing. But if they don't have anything to work on, then they have to stay. They don't get to go to the library to hang out. This is also an awesome time where I come around and help people, and can sort of patrol between my class and the library. And it could be between 1 to 3 classes of this working and watching Mankind, depending on if I had a sub during the unit, because if I'm not here at any point during the normal unit, the sub in the class are going to watch Mankind, because we're going to be watching it anyway. I then have the people that chose a civilization in whatever unit we're in present their nation project. And then lastly, they take a summative assessment, where they have the terms, interpreting people, issues, and events that we talked about, how people might be united or diverse from each other, enduring themes from the unit, turning points from the era, major events, and consequences of those events. And then we rinse and repeat through the next 6 eras. If the game happens to finish early, then we just focus on the classwork, and then if we finish the classwork early, then they can play the game for the rest of the year. Though I've never actually had it finish early. Normally I'm in a rush. There's just too many people, and everybody's new. I plan on giving updates about the game on TikTok throughout the year, since a lot of people over there have been asking for it. Obviously without names or identifying information, just focusing on the civilizations and the game. Then if people are interested, doing a full recap of the game in a YouTube video at the end of the year. So I hope you guys stay tuned for that. But as far as closing thoughts go, I found that teaching through video games is a really cool and interesting way to keep kids interested in school, which goes along with my philosophy in teaching, which is meeting kids where they are at. I've already talked about all the awesome stuff, but I do have to address some cons. Obviously the desyncing, that really sucks. Next up is cost. If you don't have the computers, that's a huge cost, plus the game is a non-zero amount, unless you're better at talking to companies than I am. It's really time consuming, and if you're worried about getting through too much, and you're unwilling to cut useless information, then this probably isn't for you, because video games, by their nature, are a very time consuming thing. And if you don't find them valuable in and of themselves, then it's probably not worth it. And maybe the worst part of all of it is sometimes kids sign up for the class, and then like a month in, they realize they don't like the game, and they're stuck in the class for the year, which has happened. And if that happens with like a normal class, like, yeah, you just deal with it, but it hurts a lot more when something's supposed to be fun and people don't find it fun. So I don't know about a solution to that. And I'd love to teach through video games in all my classes if I could. I teach economics, geography, and government as well. But I'm not sure what games would be good and long-term, or what those classes would look like. But this history class is definitely an awesome proof of concept. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions about this, please be sure to leave them in the comments. If there are enough, I'll make a video on that as well. And I'm excited to keep working on and perfecting the concept of teaching through video games. I love it. The kids love it. And what more do you need? If you want to see more things, especially about video games, please like and subscribe. Check me out on my other stuff on Discord, on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Links are above me and in the description. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.